Day.
And I'm Richard Day.
We're both chiropractors.
We've been in practice together for 11 years.
Married for 10.
With 3 beautiful little girls.
We know it's possible to have an exceptional practice that's built around your life.
Because we've done it.
So we've created this podcast,
the Lifestyle Practice Builders Podcast.
We'll interview chiropractors, answer questions, and bring you resources to help build and grow your practice.
So let's get this party started.
Welcome back to the Lifestyle Practice Builders Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haley Day, and today we are on week 3 of the 5 things you need to know before starting a practice podcast series that we've been doing. And if you are new to the podcast or haven't listened in a while, then you can catch up by listening to episode number 158. That was week 1 of this series. We talked all about mindset and why identifying your personal challenges now will help you as you transition into practice. Week 2 was episode number 160. We talked all about the business plan and why having a blueprint for your success is totally necessary. This week, I am diving a bit deeper on something we talk about a ton on the podcast, and that's your practice overhead. If you haven't already downloaded the ebook that goes along with this series, visit lifestylepracticebuilders.com/ebook and download it today. In the ebook, there are action steps for each of the 5 things we're talking about in this series, and it's a great way to get started as you pursue your dream of opening your own chiropractic practice. And if you're a nerd like me, then it's nice to have a workbook to print off and take notes on while you listen to the podcast, or maybe have on your iPad and you can take notes there too. So we're going to start today by talking about what overhead is. Then I'm going to walk you through a few scenarios so you can really get a visual of how each of these scenarios would play out in real life over the long term. And today's talk about overhead will give you a lot to think about. So put down whatever else you're working on and start paying attention. If you need to, listen to the podcast again. This is a really important topic, and I want you to grasp everything that I talk about today. So overhead, it is the sum total of all ongoing cost it takes to operate your practice, regardless of how much or how little income you bring in. So you're going to have startup cost, and that's how much money it takes to get startup. And then each month, you're going to have cost that it takes to keep your doors open each month. And so that's what overhead is. It's everything that you are paying out each month to keep your doors open. These expenses directly affect the profitability or the net income of your practice, and you have complete and total control over how many of these things you make a part of your overhead or not. Very few of these costs are definite necessities for every practice. Overhead will or can include the following: office rent, EHR, phone, fax, Wi-Fi, utilities, website, office supplies, clinic supplies, malpractice insurance, liability insurance, any employees that you have, etc. So we recommend keeping your overhead low, especially to start. Some of those that are going to be fixed are your malpractice, your liability insurance. Those are things that are going to cost a certain amount for each person, and you need them to stay open. The other things are variable, and you can find different price ranges for each of them. And so that's what we're talking about today, is how can you find a better lease, a better EHR, cheaper website, cheaper phone, fax, internet cable, all of those things. And that's what we're talking about today. We recommend keeping overhead low because the more money you are paying out to others, the less profit you are going to have in your practice. And that means you'll have less money landing in your back pocket to take home or reinvest, and that's not good. We want you to take home every penny you deserve and reinvest or invest everything else. So this was one of our goals when we were starting, and you will quickly see that by running a chiropractic practice, you are helping other businesses profit before you see your own profit. And to name a few, your landlord is going to get paid, the capo company is going to get paid, the EHR company, your malpractice company, all of those people you're going to be paying first. So the less money you are paying out to them, the less time you have to spend working, and or the more money you can keep for yourself. So you can either choose to work less hours to make less money, or you can work those same hours and take home more money. So let's look at some examples and talk some numbers so you can see the difference. So if you are paying $2,000 a month for your office space and I am only paying $1,000, then I can work that much less than you or take home $1,000 more each month. And that's $12,000 a year. So you can start to see it's adding up. If you pay $250 a month for your phone lines, fax, internet, etc., and I've found a solution that only cost me $50, then that's another $2,400 a year that I've saved for myself. If you pay $250 a month for your fancy EHR and I only pay $75, that's another $2,100 for me. And so it all starts adding up fast. And in this scenario, I saved myself $16,500 over that first year. So I can either choose to work that much less, or I can take home enough to buy a nice used car. So it's a small amount each month, but you can see how it's going to add up to huge difference over time. And those were just 3 things that we were talking about. And that whole list that I talked about in the beginning is what you can all focus on. So there's definitely a lot more money that you could take home there. And if you think that you need to start like some of the large management groups are going to tell you to do, then you're going to need like a $3,000 a month lease, $3,000 a month for a CA, $1,000 a month for X-ray lease, $1,000 a month for other equipment leases, maybe $250 a month for your EHR, $250 a month for phone and internet. And adding up these numbers are going to take you close to $10,000 a month in overhead. So you'll need to not only market to, bring in, and treat enough patients to build up to $120,000 a year, just so you're covering those expenses. And that's before you can even start paying yourself. But wait a minute, now what you'll need if you're going to start making that kind of money is you're going to need more staff. And so you can see how this cycle continues. You'll need to treat more and more patients to pay out for all of your expenses before taking home any of this money for yourself or your family. And this isn't to say that it isn't a viable option. Obviously, plenty of chiropractors have gone on and followed these practice management groups and done fine for themselves, but make sure that's where you want to go before you head down that path. You can definitely succeed going that route, but it's going to take time and energy to build, and that journey to success may not be what you're looking for. It could include shady billing practices, sleazy sales scripts, high overhead, long days, nights, and weekends, and so many other things that you really don't want in your journey of life. It's not what we wanted. And so if that's the same for you, then keep listening. If you're intrigued by the large practice management groups, then you need to ask them several questions before you sign up so you know exactly what you're signing up for. So when we started our first practice, we were very conscientious of overhead. What was the smallest amount we could spend monthly to bring in the income we needed to support our family without wasting money on unnecessary gadgets or space? Rich and I kept our overhead low so that we could work less. And we wanted to spend time with our kids. We wanted to be able to take vacations. We didn't want the stress that comes with carrying a high overhead. And instead, we've made additional income on investments, having multiple low overhead practices, and multiple streams of income. So it's a different route to take for sure. Other chiropractors that didn't make it through the first year of practice that we knew, or they were barely scraped by, had gotten themselves in too much debt or had taken on too much overhead to get open, and their operating costs were insurmountable when it came to bringing in the income to survive and really thrive for them. And please don't make this mistake, and that's why hopefully you're taking some notes during this podcast. Many of you will opt to become an independent contractor. We talk about it a lot. We think it's a great way to start in order to start with the lowest overhead possible, and we think that's great. I spoke to someone starting her own practice this week, or I talked to her this week, and her monthly overhead is going to be less than $1,000 a month. And if she brings in, let's say $100,000 her first year, she could easily be taking home $80,000 or more of that before taxes. That's a great paycheck for your first year on your own. For comparison's sake, let's say someone she graduates with goes the high overhead route we talked about earlier. That chiropractor might bring in $200,000 because they're fires under their butt and they have maybe a little bit better systems, a bit better marketing plan, but they've also spent a little bit more for that. So they come in and they're making $200,000. That's 2 times the revenue of the smaller, low overhead practice, but only take home the same amount of income, which is not 2x the first chiropractor's income of $80,000. So 2 practices, 2 different overheads still come out with the same amount of profit. So you have to ask yourself, was all of that extra work and stress worth it? How much harder did the high overhead chiropractor need to work? And how much more stress did that chiropractor take on to not make any more profit? It's too much if you ask me. Let's look a couple of years down the road. The high overhead chiropractor could bring in $300,000 and take home closer to maybe $120,000 before taxes. And maybe the low overhead could bring in $150,000 and also take home $120,000 of that. So the chiropractor with low overhead can work half as much, bring in a similar income with the option of getting a larger space and growing the practice bigger at that time, or possibly taking other routes to creating additional income, opening a satellite clinic, buying other investments, maybe real estate or another hobby that they care about. So you can see here how there's more flexibility with having the low overhead. We really want to help you if this is a goal of yours to have low overhead. So here's an action plan for this week. Decide whether low overhead is the right choice for you. And if it is, then you need to start setting your personal and professional budget for life and practice so you can make all of these things happen. You're going to need to start building up savings to work with and utilizing a budget for living, and creating your practice will especially be useful when creating your business plan, which we talked about last week. When you set a budget, then you can accurately assess how much money you're bringing in or need to bring in, so you can set goals and you know how long your savings will support you through the startup process. If you're not sure where to start, in the foundation, we give you a whole list of ways you can save money or bring in money, and then an additional spreadsheet that allows you to figure it all out using your own numbers. After seeing several of our peers struggle and close their practices, we realized how important budgeting and finances would be for succeeding. If you're still a chiropractic student or not yet in chiropractic school, then please listen to episode number 142. It's a podcast that I did about the tips I have for saving money and decreasing your student loan debt. In that episode, I give you the detailed step-by-step process I used to personally minimize my student loan debt and maximize my savings while in school. Low overhead is everything if you ask me. Before you sign on the dotted line or swipe that credit card, please make sure you are purchasing a necessity and not a want. You can always add things to your practice, but you can't always get back the money you paid, and it would be very rare for you to be able to reduce your lease amount. So please consider all of those things before moving through with them. If you plan to use a practice management group, make sure you ask them how much a typical office's overhead is, what the gross revenue of the typical practice is, and what the typical net profit is. Make sure you understand the amount and kind of work it's going to take to bring in the gross revenue. Make sure the journey to getting there is the right one for you, and the extra work and stress of managing that size business is worth the extra gains that you might see. If you're unsure of all of this, then talk to your accountant or reach out to us. It's really important you know what these numbers mean before you commit. And I get so excited for you guys each week as we talk about these things that you must know before starting your practice. It's extremely valuable information you all need. It is going to put you in a better place as you start to transition from student or chiropractic associate to small business owner. Please go download the ebook that accompanies this series at lifestylepracticebuilders.com/ebook. You can also visit our profile on Instagram at Lifestyle Practice and follow our link there to download the ebook. Don't waste your time. Get started today and have an awesome week.
If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please share it with your friends on Instagram and Facebook. And for those of you who are already subscribers, we really appreciate it. Thanks for the reviews. We love reading those and knowing that you're loving the podcast. If you're looking for more tips and inspiration, be sure to check us out at lifestylepracticebuilders.com or join our business and marketing Facebook group for chiropractors at facebook.com/group/lifestylepractice.